Monday morning, I woke up extremely early because I just wanted to make sure that I am there early. The conference itself was starting at 9 a.m. But knowing that it was the very first day, I knew I had to get there very early and also get my registration. BitNob had actually done that registration on my behalf. When I was actually going there, it was just to pick the pass, but I needed to find him first. So I got there early enough. So what I was doing, by the way, and this is a hack for me, I used the Safaricom MPESA Global Pay card and then joined it on my Bolt or to the Uber app. I could be able to use MPESA to be able to pay for rides wherever I was. So it's like I was paying via card, but I was actually paying via MPESA. That for me felt really nice because I didn't have to withdraw money again. And then on top of that, I would be able to go wherever I need to go without needing Wi-Fi at this particular place. So I stay in my room, make the order. Once I see the cab has come a little closer, I just make sure I look at the name, seeing as I don't have internet. When I now get out, I just find out, is this a correct cab? I get on it, I get to my destination. It was that simple. And then by the time we're getting to the destination, my M-Pesa account is debited for that amount, and that was okay for me. Once I got there, took this nice video, this was before even people showed up, of the way the place looked, but I didn't get a good video of the inside, which it's okay. I waited a few minutes, actually went back and sat down at the reception-ish lobby and then waited while they showed up, I think at around 8:30, and then went in. Everything was smooth sailing. Then the conference started with a speech by Farida, and Farida is the convener of the conference.
So I wanted to kind of like, before we get started properly, set the tone by telling you about how this conference came to be. Initially, it was about myself getting involved into Bitcoin as a necessity at specific moments when it was critical for my activism in Togo. Then eventually I got to meet incredible African Bitcoiners, developers that are working on the protocol, African investors, and other investors around the globe that are interested in making this currency accessible to all. And I was invited to speak in Miami a couple of months ago. Then we found out about how a lot of our colleagues in Africa couldn't make it because they couldn't obtain a visa. Then we were like, we should think about bringing the conference here in Africa, and then we welcome everyone to Africa. So I would like to thank you for being in the group of the first people that are As an activist, I receive a very frequent question. How come a political activist fighting to break down the oldest military dictatorship on the continent starts speaking about Bitcoin? What is the correlation between money and politics? The reality is that money defines politics. And in many countries across the globe, most precisely on our continent, some countries have achieved monetary independence, but others have not. And my country belongs to those groups of nations that are still using a colonial currency called the CFA. But beyond that, we can have a whole session about the CFA and how it is preventing growth. However, a lot of governments have actually weaponized money and resources against their own people, especially under authoritarian settings, where the bank accounts of activists are frozen, where people are charged of crimes simply because they had access to foreign currency, where citizens are not allowed to own any currency but the one imposed by the government, even when they know that currency means nothing and is depreciating every day, where the rich actually manage to manipulate the numbers and get richer, and people wake up one morning to find out that their savings have lost more than 80% of its value. In many countries, money isn't easy to access because of the political system, but also sometimes because of geopolitics. There are nations that have been seeing some forms of political embargoes for money reasons. It's impossible to send money there. However, the citizens of these countries need to live and survive. Maybe on a continent where more than 70% of our citizens don't have access to the banking system. Because the banking system was built on a colonial model that doesn't kind of like take into consideration some of the aspects of our infrastructural deficit. People tend to open bank accounts, why they don't have national IDs, why they don't even have birth certificates. The hurdles are multiple, and all of these are preventing our citizens from accessing financial freedom. So the goal of those of us who initiated this conference is to launch a movement on this continent, a movement that involves freedom fighters, developers, thinkers, who can build solutions that can help our citizens access money freely. We want to have a borderless currency, but more importantly, a currency that reminds us of who we are. We want a currency for humanity, and this is why the African Bitcoin Conference wants to set its own to become a pioneer of this movement on the continent. A Pan-African movement that is aimed to build growth, but most importantly, to help us dismantle the systems of colonial, political, economic, monetary appetite. So I'd like to thank you so much once again for coming here today, and I hope you enjoy the sessions, take advantage of this opportunity to make great connections, and we hope to mingle and have fun in the coming days. Thank you.
Listening to Farida speak made me understand the way people view Bitcoin in other countries and the way, like on other continents, and the way we view it here in Africa can be completely different. And the qualities of Bitcoin, like store of value, medium of exchange, things like that, people understand it very differently depending on their circumstances. After she had spoken, it was CEO of Bitno, Bernard Para, who actually spoke next. And just for the sake of this particular video, whatever he spoke and the speech that he gave, I don't want to cut anything. So here is Bernard's speech.
One common characteristic of all empires is how they do their best to keep their subjects or client states poor, either by forceful extraction of their wealth and resources, constant taxes, suppression of freedom of speech, or freedom of association, both overtly and covertly. Like everything that finds a working formula and doubles our needs, empires use that to grow very powerfully. But over time, what happens with every empire is they eventually fall. And then when they fall, what happens is they become stories, they become myths, where different people talk about them in different ways or see them in different, depending on what perspective they see it from. When we look at the history of sub-Saharan Africa and Africa in general, we will find stories of many great empires, from the Empire of Ghana to the Empire of Mali to the Empire of Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Aksum Empire, and the Songhai Empire. All of these empires do not exist today, maybe that's why you haven't heard about them. They're just stories. Many people who come from these empires do not know about this. So they do not know their roots. They do not know the greatness that they come from. So I will focus briefly on the history of empires in sub-Saharan Africa. The first recorded empire to emerge from this side of the Sahara is the Empire of Ghana. This empire was located in what is today modern-day Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal. The Empire of Ghana pioneered iron working and used that to expand their empire through military conquest. When the Ghanaian Empire started trading when the Empire of Ghana started trading with the Arabs, then opening the first trans-Saharan trade routes, the Arabs found that they had so much gold, a resource that was so valuable, yet available in abundance when compared to known sources around the world. In fact, before the 16th century, this region was the world's top gold producer. So much gold left Africa at that time that the Arabs and Europeans began to believe there must be a mountain of gold, a secret closely guarded by African kings. The idea was so common that it gave birth to the myth of King Solomon's mines. In reality, most of this gold was mined on the banks of the majestic River Niger, and Senegal. This new trade route signaled the start of a new era for both regions, with caravans moving with goods and luxuries between them. The 14th century writer Ibn Battuta once wrote that the sizes of these caravans could get to as large as 12,000 camels, with each carrying up to 125 kilograms of goods and luxuries from the Mediterranean, while returning with gold and slaves from the Empire of Ghana. With many of its client states demanding independence, just like every empire, the Ghana Empire declined after almost 500 years of ruling. But then, one of its client states took power by seizing control of the lucrative Saharan trade routes. That was the Empire of Mali. The Empire of Mali inherited much of the wealth and power of the Empire of Ghana, but under the ruthless and effective leadership of Mansa Musa, the system of trans-Saharan trade was developed to new proportions. Mansa Musa conquered more than 20 cities at a time, creating one of the largest empires Africa had ever seen. The ancient kingdom of Mali spread across parts of modern-day Mali, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, with cities like Timbuktu and Gao developed as important cultural centers. If you look at the map of Africa today, this is a very large landmass. But what will make us keep talking about someone like Mansa Musa today is because of his expensive Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca in the year 1324. He set off travel with an entourage of tens of thousands of people and dozens of camels, each carrying 136 kilograms or 300 pounds of gold, totaling today, based on today's market prices, more than half a billion US dollars. While in Cairo, Mansa Musa met with the Sultan of Egypt, and his caravan spent and gave away so much gold that the overall value of gold decreased and brought about unprecedented inflation in Egypt for the next 12 years. On his way back from his Hajj, or from his pilgrimage, he felt bad about the effect. He saw the destruction that caused in those countries and started loaning back the gold, as much gold as he could from the people. This is the first and the last time in history that one man was known to control the price of most of the world's gold. While incredibly wealthy and influential at that time, the Empire of Mali also saw its own years of eventual decline, especially after the death of Mansa Musa. After that, we had so many empires, including the Songhai Empire, but today, there are no more. By trading gold, the early kingdoms of West Africa swelled to eye-watering wealth. The Arab writer Ibn al-Faqih once remarked in his book, The Book of Lands, that in Africa, gold grows in the sand like carrots do, and is picked at sunrise. One often neglected part of history is that these trade routes exchanged not just luxury goods and salt for gold, but also slaves. The caravans would usually go back with gold and slaves to be sold in Arab and European markets. The forceful plundering of people and resources became wars when the Portuguese arrived on the continent and started what we know today as the transatlantic slave trade, where over 12 million people were forcefully taken into slavery. The ground on which we stand today, Ghana, formerly known as the Gold Coast, became a European darling because of the large supplies of gold. The Europeans loved it so much that the Portuguese built a fort, Elmina Castle, just a few miles away from here. The Danish, the Swedes, the Dutch, the English eventually built their own castles in a scramble for gold. As this commerce grew, the Europeans began demanding for slaves as part of the trade, such that over time, the slave trade became even bigger than the original gold trade. Why is Ghana talking to you about empires today? Well, because a client state is typically ruled by a single empire, but Africa today is currently under the rule of many empires. It is a hard burden to bear. On the brighter side, I want Africans to know that it has not always been like this. The image that everyone has today is of poverty, but that's not where you come from. I want everyone to know that they had wealthy kingdoms without foreign aid or loans. I want everyone to know that we have been able to create incredible wealth for ourselves under our own leadership. I want them to feel a sense of royalty whenever another person tries to look down on them. I want you to know that we can do this again. It is important to acknowledge the economic effects of slavery if we're to truly understand the things I'm talking about today. When my sister Farida asked me to present this keynote, I thought of many things I'd like to talk to you about, so many things. Up until last night, I still wasn't sure of what to talk about. Because of the timing of this and the location of this gathering, I decided to talk about this. Having this inaugural conference in Ghana is symbolic for so many reasons. Ghana was called the Gold Coast, like I said earlier. Ghana was the first country to gain independence in sub-Saharan Africa in 1957. The African country with the highest gold production, and the African leader in the list of 14 other countries. You will find the top 50 gold producing countries in the world today. And just to add, Ghana is the 6th largest producer of gold in the world today. Our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents fought for our independence in various African countries, as we know. While celebrations rocked our cities and hinterlands during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anytime one country gained independence. Finally, we're a free people, free to govern ourselves, and free to decide our political, social, and economic fate. Must have been what most of the commentaries sounded like. Over the years, we have come to realize that that is not happening and hasn't happened. The world has moved way ahead of us, despite our numerous natural and human resources. We cannot point to great economic progress for most of our people. There are, of course, so many reasons for this, but one of the most important reasons that we don't talk about is our lack of monetary independence. Political independence without monetary independence is like giving someone a train without an engine. My brothers and sisters from the Francophone part of Africa understand this and can relate to this on a deeply personal level. Our leaders, even in situations where they actually want to do good work, are subjected to or sometimes tricked into agreeing to very draconian terms in order to access financing. Financing will usually end up paying 1,000-fold over so many years. The image is so grim when you think about it, that even our unborn children are already in debt to foreign powers. It was society for Dr. Nkrumah, the man who led Ghana to its independence in 1963, who in 1963 at the inaugural summit of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union, who remarked that it is important to remember that independent financing and independent development cannot take place without an independent currency. A currency system that is backed by the resources of the foreign state is ipso facto subject to the trade and financial arrangements of that foreign country. Today, if you wanted to send money from one African country to another, there's an 80% chance that it first has to go through North America or Europe before coming back to Africa. And just to rephrase, it means that if we're sending $100 billion out of Africa, at least $80 billion of that has to go through other continents before coming back to us. By doing this, we lose at least $5 billion of our sweat every year. That's a lot of money, and we shouldn't be giving that away for nothing. When millions of Africans around the world send money back home, a huge chunk of this goes through these existing financial institutions, shaving off more billions from our collective work anywhere we are. Anywhere we are in the world, we seem to pay this sort of shadow tax to a monetary system that doesn't benefit us. Running a rough math of $100 billion in yearly remittances back to Africa on an average of 8% fee, we lost over $8 billion yearly to these alone. This is our sweat. We have to stop giving it away for free. Kwame Nkrumah put it best back then. He saw that our political freedom will not allow us to grow as a continent without our economic freedom. He once remarked in that same event that because we have so many customs and currency barriers as a result of being subject to the different currency systems of foreign powers, This has served to widen the gap between us and Africa. How, for example, can related communities and families trade with and support one another successfully if they find themselves divided by national boundaries and currency restrictions? The only alternative open to them in these circumstances is to use smuggled currencies and enrich national and international racketeers and crooks who prey upon our financial and economic difficulties. No independent African state today by itself has a chance to follow an independent course of economic development. And many of us who have tried to do this have almost been ruined, or have had to return to the fold of our former colonial masters. This position will not change unless we have a unified policy working at the continental level. The first step towards our cohesive economy will be a unified monetary zone with initially an agreed common parity for our currencies. I continue. With a common currency from one common bank of issue, we should be able to stand erect on our own feet, because such an arrangement will be fully backed by the combined national product of the states composing the union. After all, the purchasing power of money depends on the productivity and productive exploitation of the natural, human, and physical resources of the nation. While we are assuring our stability by creating a common defense system, and our economy is being oriented beyond foreign control by a common currency, monetary zone, and central bank of issue, we can investigate the resources of our continent. We can determine whether we possess the largest potential in hydroelectric power, and whether we can harness it and other sources of energy to our own industries. We can proceed to plan our industrialization on a continental scale and build up a common market of nearly 300 million people, which today is over 1.2 billion people. In hindsight, Kwame Nkrumah was right on the money. So today the questions are, how do we build a common central bank today? How do we start work on a common currency? How do we start work on creating common monetary zones? This sounds like a lot of work. It actually is a lot of work. If Bitcoin existed back then, he would have deeply studied it and probably ended up becoming one of its biggest proponents. The good part of it is we can use that alternative today. It combines all the things we wanted to achieve into one. The best part of it works on the internet, a medium of information, exchange. Millions of people around the world are jumping on every year. The internet is a new trade route. When we think about the trans-Saharan trade routes and the transatlantic trade routes, the internet is like a new trade route. And what it does is open commerce across the world. While we still have lots of gold today, most of our gold still remains under the control of the colonial masters through their companies. But now we have something that cannot be easily controlled. Bitcoin provides a credible alternative for us to explore. Our experience with the current financial systems, which were and are still being built to not include people like us, tells us that we have to believe in ourselves and try to solve our own problems our own way. How Bitcoin has solved some of those challenges for us are practical reasons why we should be spending more time, not just understanding it, but building communities for it, products, and engaging in commerce with ourselves using it. The reality is today we get a lot of blanket bans when a few of us err. Economic decisions are made in boardrooms around Europe and Africa without thinking of the second order effects of those on places like Africa. Most of Africa today operates in a way that only makes other currencies stronger while weakening our own local currencies. We have to ask ourselves if it's possible for someone in Nigeria to trade with an naira with someone in Malawi using the kwacha while that exchange is settled in Bitcoin instead of a foreign currency like the US dollar. It's absolutely possible today. I'm already seeing lots of that happen. When we pay for something using Bitcoin, we're not using the dollar at that time. So essentially, there's less demand for it. When we get paid for our services or goods in Bitcoin, there's no euro, dollar, or any other foreign controlled currency involved as far as we're concerned. We have started it. We can do more of that. I do not know the exact approach to tell everyone to take, but what I will encourage is a lot of exploration without fear, a lot of exploration with courage. We are teaching the world how to use this tool, and I hope that we continue in that regard. The recent article by the European Central Bank, where they mentioned that Bitcoin has not been used for any legal transaction, is a wake-up call for all of us to be kind of malicious thinking about anything that benefits anyone outside of the colonial powers. Only what they decide is legal is legal. This is dangerous thinking and something we shouldn't accept to sit in. Take this as a call to double down on your quest for freedom. I smell a lot of fear and desperation. We have the world's youngest population, and once we can find our economic freedom, it increases our chances of starting another golden era for Africa. Many of you are flown from many different parts of the world to come here in solidarity. We are humbled and grateful to have allies in you. Allies like you worked with our forefathers to fight for our independence. I hope that you get to learn a lot from us this week that will further strengthen your resolve in joining us to fight for economic freedom for not just Africa, but billions of people around the world. The beauty about working for and on Bitcoin is that we can all work for each other. In fact, we do work for each other. The value of our collective work is reflected in the growth and value of the network. When I talk about the value, I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about the potential it has to positively change the economic and social status of so many people around the world. The price, in my opinion, is a distraction and something we should leave for the casinos to worry about right now. To my fellow brothers and African and sisters of African descent from here and abroad, I urge you to feel a sense of responsibility. I know that sometimes you feel neglected, but I need you to please feel more responsibility, a sense of responsibility towards this cause. Because a lot of us might be young right now, the things are so bad, we might not see something working for us or in our lifetime. So at least we should try to start that fight for our future generations. Every single day we do not fight back, it means an extra day for our children to fight back. World powers fear a united people that is not in debt to them. But their fears won't stop our yearning and quest for a united continent free from wars and poverty. If anything, their fears should be an encouragement for us to walk. We are on ground. We know what is happening. We have to trust ourselves more than anyone. Thank you very much.
For the first time, I actually thought of how great Africa is. And I think just looking back, that was probably the first seed that was planted that actually made me think of the podcast that we are doing this year. The stories of Africa and how great Africa is will only be told by Africans, and I want to be one of them. That's the biggest inspiration I got during this particular conference. And Bernard, because I know you'll watch this, thank you so much for that particular speech.